So we can see your screen and recording is in progress.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I'm glad and honored to open the 9th edition of the seminar, Political and Economic Self-Constitution. This edition of the seminar is concentrated on education for digital citizenship in post-pandemic times. This edition of the seminar is hosted by Federal University of Santa Catarina in Brazil and organized by Professor Andrea Giacomosi and coordinated by NGO Center for Personal and Social Transformation, Ukraine. This organization is managed by me, head of the board, Irina Bondarevskaya. On this slide, you can see other co-organizers from 11 countries. Besides just mentioned organizations, those are Institute of Social Sciences from Serbia, CISAS and PSO from Italy, University of Educational Management from Ukraine, Center for Social Representation Studies from Indonesia, Lucian Blaga University of Sibiu and the EPIA from Romania, University of Varmia and Majuri in Olsztyn, Poland, University of the Peloponnese from Greece, Moldova State University, Mykolas Romeris University from Lithuania, University of Pécs Institute of Psychology from Hungary. Political and Economic Self-Constitution seminar participants contributed to development of materials which are available in open access on YouTube channel of Center for Personal and Social Transformations. Everybody can watch videos from 2019 seminar, which was held in Padua, and 2020, which was held online and in Institute of Social Sciences in Serbia. Besides these video recordings, there are also 9 editions of proceedings of the seminar, which can be interesting for PhD students and scientists from all over the world, I think. Because now we see that our seminar is getting transcontinental. Not only European scientists are involved in participation and organization of this seminar, but also organizations and scientists from Brazil and Indonesia. Today we will have hopefully 2 presentations from Indonesia. And also, I would like to mention that starting from this year, I would like to involve contemporary art in the seminar, and will also show one of possibilities of how to do that during my presentation later on part 2. Today, our seminar will be divided into 2 parts. We have sent the program to all registered participants, and I'm glad to pass the word to the representative of the host organization, Federal University of Santa Catarina from Brazil, Professor Andrea Giacomosi.
Thanks, Irina. Good morning for those who are in Brazil. Good afternoon for those who are in Europe. I'm very glad to be here too today. And I thank Irina to inviting me to co-organize with her this event this year here at my university in Brazil. And I participate for the first time at this event in Italy in 2019. And since then I have been part of this group. It's a great pleasure. And as this year we are in Brazil, I prepared a playlist with Brazilian songs to put on our break, so you can relax and get into the Brazilian mood a little bit. So I hope you like the music and the works that will be presented today. Thank you for coming. Enjoy and have a good day.
I would also like to acknowledge Diana Vukamanovic, I'm sorry if I mispronounce, from Institute of Social Sciences from Serbia, who will present today, but also this institute provided us with this Zoom channel, and Diana will help us with keeping this channel, which is very important during online meetings.
Thank you for confidence in me. I will do my best. I hope that everything will went smoothly. Today it is sunny day, so that's to have a good luck.
I would propose Professor Andrea Giacomosi to start part one of our seminar and introduce speakers.
Yes, for opening our event today, we invite Professor Annamaria de Rosa, professor from Sapienza, Università degli Studi di Roma, to do her contribution. Please, Professor Annamaria.
Thank you so much to the organizer. Also for me, this is a third meeting I participate. We start in Padua with 2019, as Andrea recalled. So thank you, Irina, Andrea, and all the co-organizer of this nice event. I will share the screen. Just a second. So. Is it fine for you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. The title of this presentation is People or Labels, and this is a reflection on polarized social representation of immigrant in the political institutional discourse, driven by naming and personification versus unnaming and de-personification processes. Those who are familiar with the social representation theory knows very well that naming and personification are two important elements of a process for anchoring. Now I'll start with some photo. There are people crossing different routes, as you see, from the sea, land, and also detention camp. But even tortured in detention camp like in Libya or in Turkey, or died along the land or sea route, as the famous Halan Kurdi that finally moved some emotion, and immigrants were not only labels or number. Here you see the reconstruction of immigrant as number. Indeed, most of the documents are based on number. And this is interesting also to see how the perception of the reality compare the misperception can be addressed this problem. Here you have the number of arrival, but also of dead and missing people on the route of the Mediterranean. This is a sources from International Organization Migration. And you see that in 2020, there is just a small decrease in the arrival, but not so much in the death, because almost 1,500 people died even last year. And here you have two maps from the Mediterranean and the Europe, which is there are several routes from Africa, but also from Eastern country, from Asia. And you see these are from 29 of April, so decrease indeed the arrival. And in October 2021, this is an increasing number of arrivals in Italy and in Spain. So, if the pandemic replaced the protagonist of the media agenda, Although in the 2020, the immigrants slightly decreased, as I already said, but never stopped to arrive to Europe and even to die during their travel, the pandemic indeed has replaced them completely from the media agenda, making them invisible, while making the invisible coronavirus visible. And here I put the cover page of a book that just arrived to me yesterday, where there is also a contribution more extended compared to what I'm able to present today in short time, and even in what I sent in written format. So the interesting is invisible migrant worker and the visible human right. This is an interesting theme, the focus of being visible or invisible. But indeed, what the immigrant and COVID have in common in people's mind? They both share an association with enemy, the invader, evoking metaphorical war scenario, stimulating fear and uncertainty. But currently, October 2021, right now, at a time that thanks to the mass vaccination campaign, we start to turn in a new normal, we are witnessing in Europe a flashback against immigration in the media political discourse. Indeed, just a week before, 60 European member states have to set up the Club of the Wall, claiming to build them with the European funds. And this is a big challenge for European Union, to save their founding value. So the head of the Commission said, not with the European funds, if you want to be member of the European Union. And there is always this tension between a state and the European members, But the sovereignist and populist movement increased a lot also in Europe, and not only because we have had a great example in Trump, US president, in Bolsonaro in Brazil, Orban in Hungary, and Salvini, our head of the Lega Nord, extreme right party. Now, the focus of this presentation is based on studying several sources, more than 600 documents produced by different institutions at the government level, national level, international one. And the idea is to look more in depth to the different labels. So how these immigrants are named and how many legal status correspond to this different name. And that's why I start to think about unnaming and de-personification. De-personification and unname, that means to consider this plethora of legal name, refugee, asylum seeker, migrant, stateless, immigrant, alien, newcomer, immigrant, foreign, undocumented, illegal, unauthorized, unaccompanied, economic migrant, and also smuggler. Sometimes immigrant and smuggler who exploit them are even confused in the discourse. Now, this to reflect on visibility and invisibility of the migrant imply to show the duality of this process, naming and unnaming, personalization, depersonalization. And this indeed can be a new epistemic key for social representation theory. So are these migrant people, as you have seen from the first images, or just number, or just label? So the background research results show from different media line, because this is a complex research project, looking at the multi-channel and multi-agent, indeed, producer of a discourse. So we look at this multiple denomination of a migrant corresponding to different status. The immigrants are often assimilated from one side with a dangerous, extraneous invader, even stigmatized as a criminal or terrorist, legitimizing fear and the need for barrier and protection of own territory by the population of the host country. From the other side can be defined and perceived and represented as a forced new home seeker and refugees, and therefore as a social victim. But let's see what happens in the document. But I was frapped from this 2021 October 7 nomination of a Nobel Prize in Literature. And you have for sure heard this news. And it is impressive how a past immigrant give a voice to his own migratory experience, becoming a Nobel Prize. But how many dead people and tragic life story of the unvoiced immigrant for just one Nobel Prize? So you see here again Alan Kurdi, very famous, who touched finally the heart of many people, but even forgotten. And a migrant from a detention camp. And now here is a recent manifestation in Rome. Being a refugee is not a crime. And here for you, this Nobel Prize on the day it was awarded of this important recognition, and the list of important books that deserve this Nobel Prize awarding, all based on Memory of Departure, Pilgrim Way, Dotti, Paradise, Admiring Silence, By the Sea, Desertion, The Last Gift, Gravelhafer, and Afterlives. All these books are based on a reflection on his own drama as a refugee. And now, in one of the articles, the colonialism is now in the shadow. Now we need to give a voice to the drama of the refugee. Now, coming back to on the focus of the presentation, I am going to present in a part of a result of this research, which is based on almost 10,000 sources, what I call the multi-voice and the multi-agent discourse, because the analysis is by experts, so the scientific literature on migration, political institutional nature of document policy by policymaker, but even social citizen, lay people. And in this sense, we have a multi-level scientific discourse, institutional and policy-driven discourse by national, international political institution with different geopolitically governmental scenario in the EU, US, Canada, Brazil, and other country continent. The media discourse by journalists who are the mediator between expert knowledge and citizen knowledge in the online press and multimedia broadcast. And finally, the discourse for and by lay people in different social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. That means also multi-channel, because not only these media are only text, but also photo and videos. So this is a table with the sum of the, for each level, you have some of the logo for recognition. For example, we have a Camera dei Deputati, the Parliament, European Commission, and so on, the Senate. So institutional and policy-driven discourse, which is exactly the level of a discourse that I'm going to present. But you have also journal of different geopolitically positioning and the social media, as I said. Now, to classify this different political discourse, I can present shortly this slide. So national and regional political institutions, that's our official document at the national and regional level, but also international political institutions, for example, European Commission. But we also analyze national humanitarian association and NGO at the national level and international level. And scientific center and program, always at the national and international level, and the Italian the political leader, Italian political leader and leader from other country, but also religious authority. So we examined also all the discourse of the Pope related, Francis Pope related to the immigrant. We take in consideration the temporal and the geopolitical framework to contextualize this media and institutional discourse within the specific, let's say, government. Now, for example, in Italy, which is a very moving country and unstable in relation to the political, we move from a Democratic Party governed by the Premier Letta, Renzi, Gentiloni, and after we had this Premier Conte 1 and Conte 2, two different governments. In the first case, with an alliance between five-star populist movement and the North Lega, which is a right-wing party. And in the second, when there was a failure of this Conte 1 government, we moved to Conte 2 with the completely different coalition, always the five-star movement, but in coalition with the Democrat Party and Italia Viva, which is also from a new party from Democratic Party. And now, as you probably know, Italy has found a new government since February 21, which is still in charge with a great authority, and is a coalition, a big coalition. Only the very extreme right is outside of the government, Fratelli d'Italia, Italian brother. But we also consider during this timeline what is the wider scenario, because in this interconnected world, we cannot say that a political discourse produced in Italy is not also the echo, for example, of Trump or now Biden discourse. And you will see from empirical data how this is important to take into consideration a sort of international scenario. This is one of the first results I presented from two kinds of analysis, specificity analysis and later cluster analysis. All these categories that I've mentioned as a tag for categorizing the material according to the sources are here in these bidimensional factorial spaces. You find from one side Italian political leader with the main protagonist in a photo, Salvini, Di Maio, Lamorgese. There are of different political party, but depending on the time frame, as I mentioned, you have also political leader from EU, US, Canada, and Brazil. No? So you can recognize Trump, Bolsonaro, Orban from Hungary, from Turkey, Merkel from Germany, and Trudeau from Canada. Indeed, you have also national political institution that, as you will see from the result, is a special focus on Canada, and international political institution. But we don't have only Canada here. We have also Italy and many European countries. But as you will see from the result, Canada organized a special discourse around migration and in special for policy. It's one of the most welcoming countries in the world, but for strategic reason, for economic reason. And here you have international political institutions. So we have, in a certain sense, the two sides of Atlantic. From the other side, you have at the extreme the Pope, but the discourse of the Pope is quite well interconnected with some discourse produced by national scientific center, like, for example, Center of Migration Study of New York, which is a very important one, but also international scientific center, for example, the Mediterranean Migration Center, or IMISCOI, which is a very important network on migration studies, and international NGO, like, for example, UNHCR, the Caritas, International Caritas, or International Organization of Migration, but many other. We have many, many sources. And from the other side, you have national NGO, like Sea-Watch or Open Heart. So you will see, now I have deleted many, many slides to be in time, but you will see here not only the sources of a discourse, but even some word that I am here to mention. Also in relation to what I say about unnaming and de-personification. So who are the migrant as people in the discourse? Only in one unique sources, or we can say two, the national NGO and the Francis Pope. All the political discourse is very self-referential. Italian political leaders mention themselves, Boldrini, Luciana, Lamorgese, Di Maio, and they compete each other and they critique each other, and the attention for migrant is only for ministerial decree who establish redistribution or repatriation, especially when Salvini was the Minister of Interior. He really increase the fear citizen against the immigrant as invader, intruder, and criminal as well. Also on political leader here of different orientation, because you have Trudeau, which is a liberal from Canada, Merkel, Democrat, but also this very sovereignist leader as Trump, Bolsonaro, from Turkey, Orban. And also here, the immigrant as people are never cited. So the attention is again, for example, the name of Merkel, chancellor, but also newcomer. The migrants are especially mentioned as a newcomer, especially in the Canadian and from the other side of Atlantic. And here you have a very another sources are relevant for the organization of a discourse. You see different color for different sources, mainly focus on Canadian discourse. All these discourse are produced in document, official document from the government of the province. So you have Ontario province, Quebec, and in the discourse about immigrant from Canada, the main focus is to welcome immigrant for improving economy of the country. But the condition to be admitted are even quite selective. So they need to demonstrate that, and unless they are temporary workers, to be economic independent, to have already a job and so on. So there are not the kind of immigrant coming to Italy on the boat and almost some also in a very risky situation, okay? So it's a completely different idea. And we can say that Canada is anyway a country of immigrants. There are only the confined indigenous still as a national habitat that are also marginalized, although there is a politically correct discourse in Canada that they cannot feel as marginalized. So from the other side, you have these international NGO who anyway deal with the policy for not for control of the immigrant, but eventually for rescue, as you have here, for example, from the the Sea Watch. So it is the unique, together the Pope, who called the immigrant as person that can be died, that risk their life, and the mission of this NGO is to ensure safety and let them survival. Okay, so rescue is their mission. But you have here like a reference to Libya. So this is a special NGO working in Mediterranean. And here you have other international NGO working not only on Mediterranean, and so stateless, for example, the migrant, smuggle, refugee, and as well in a scientific discourse. Sometimes you find in scientific discourse a word that appear significant in a cluster, like crime. And so it seems strange if you don't contextualize, but in most of the case, this scientific discourse is a counter-argument against the discourse of, for example, Donald Trump. And so they mention the word evoked by the Donald Trump discourse. So we need to be very careful when we use this statistic, if we forget the anchoring of the result with the context of the discourse. And now, very quickly, the second kind of analysis is the cluster analysis that produces 7 classes, and just one is related to emergency rescue action approach by the NGO. The other 6 indeed show a discourse very depersonalized, and where immigrant are never mentioned as people, but there is a sort of management approach to migration phenomenon with different declination. So the first class is focused on policy-driven research approach to migration. And so the word that I am going to show in a second are report, datum, project, analysis, research, migration. So basically research, policy-driven research, and many cases funded also by European Commission. This is the cluster: report, datum, project, analysis, international organization, migration, policy, integration. So you don't find here reference to the life of migrant, but migrant, as in the other factor that I'm going to show. And you will see here the organization of the cluster. There are these 6 which are all linked to each other, and this national NGO, as in the graph that I presented before, the Sea Watching is almost independent. Now, the second class is related always to migration processes. So migrants are referred as actor, but also route and migratory experience, but not as a people, just how to manage and how to control the European border versus irregular forced to emigrate by smuggler. Okay, for example, these sentences is quite interesting. With over 1 million irregular migrants crossing its external border in 2015, you should remember the Syrian crisis, the European Union has to engage in a deep reflection on the rationale underpinning its policy on irregular migration and migrant smuggling and their effect. So the problem is how to control and to manage this problem. And now, and this is the class: migrant, migratory, country, destination, asylemus, smuggler, seeker, and so on. And now we will see the other two, the third class and the fourth cluster. The third class is focused on number of arrival, especially mentioning country like Syria, Turkey, Africa, Spain, UK, Morocco, Italy, USA, and Asia. And also there are significant words like war, crisis, refugee, stateless, and asylemus seeker. This reference modality were the variable who make of the sources who make significant this class are international NGO, humanitarian association, but also scientific center and the political leader from international scenario that produce this kind of analysis. And the fourth cluster is basically dedicated to Canadian discourse on migration. And the focus here is not so much on migration as a phenomenon to be controlled, but a phenomenon to be, in a certain sense, I would say, exploited. So it is a sort of economic view of the newcomer as a contribution for the Canadian economy. But they look for skilled migrant. I work now in a joint project with Lilian Negura from University of Ottawa on migration as an extension of the project that I started in 2017 and carried out for 3 years of data collection. Now, and most of the cases, Lilian said, not all the immigrants arrive to Italy as you arrive in Canada on first-class flight. We have a completely different image of the immigrant coming to Italy or in general to Europe. Anyway, finally, so this is the class from Ottawa. I'm almost finishing. Ontario, Canada, newcomer, economic program, immigrant. Also, they take care of a language, skill. And I would say that they also arrange a lot of inclusive strategy driven by a model of assimilation. More than integration is an assimilation. The immigrant need to become Canadian and so become proud to be Canadian. So they work a lot for language, for introducing them, for assimilating them. So market economy. And finally, the last, we have still other two classes I have to show. You see here the international leader are also close to the class of the Pope. And on the other side, we have the last class of the NGO. So the political leader, as I already mentioned before, are from EU, US, Canada, Brazil. But in these cases, the class is also integrated the Italian political leader. And they focus on the legislation that regulated the migratory flow, opening or closing the frontier, depending, of course, of their political positioning, which is highly polarized, pro or against immigration. Finally, the sixth class is the epistemic authority of the Pope, which is not only a religious one, because the Pope is also the head of a state, indeed. Although a small state, apparently small state, the Vatican State, it is quite transnational because of the diffusion of the religion all over the world. So here, people are not just number, but the discourse is an inclusive discourse based on love, dignity, culture, and the immigrant as the migrant as a human being. Also, of course, inspired by faith in God, Jesus, and Christ. Every stranger who knocks at our door is an opportunity for an encounter with Jesus Christ. But there is the idea that people, we are all migrants. So, and here you have this class around the discourse of a pope close to the other. And the last one is the 7th class by the NGO, who are, you know, focused on people to be saved, people who may die or drown if we don't do anything. And so also ships, boat, vessel to rescue, but also people in distress, especially in the Mediterranean Sea, with its port, coast, and front line of a country departure, Libya, Syria, and arrival, Malta, but also Spain and Italy. Okay, now here I have already mentioned the main word, so, but you find again this kind of, it's only reverse. Here the Pope is at the top and the NGO is on the other side, but it is again political leader, political institution organized the factual spaces. And now just to conclude, I would like to mention some interesting result that we have obtained just focusing on two agents of the discourse. One is Donald Trump discourse and the other is the Pope. We have analyzed almost the very specific discourse on migration, and the two metaphors organize completely the social representation. One is the metaphor of the bridge from the Pope discourse, and the other is of the wall. You know that he wanted to build a wall, and this book is very interesting, showing that Trump not only wanted to build this wall on the border of Mexico, but also put the crocodile in between. And this is not a joke, because if you read this book has been written by collaborator of Trump in White House, so they know very well what was his intent, where his intention. So you have here analysis, for example, the discourse of Trump. The first significant word is wall. Wall, state, border, immigration, American first. No, I say always American first means American alone, because we cannot be so concentrated in one single country in this interconnected world. And the Pope is a sort of echo of the discourse, but you find the bridge. But more important, people, so migrant, but also God, migration, human life, dignity, development, solidarity, and so on. So to conclude, analyzing these 1100 sources from political discourse, but also NGO, International Research Center and National Research Center, and authority, epistemic authority as the Pope, we had empirical confirmation of this de-personification and the naming of the marginalized outgroup as a new key for objectification and anchoring process that build the social representation. So there is anyway against a polarization between the representation based on naming a personification, for example, as in the NGO or in the Pope discourse, where the attention is on human condition, on the people as survival, human, refugee, versus the discourse of the institutional document that make them invisible. And in the between these two poles, there is an economic driven representation that we may find especially in the Canadian discourse. So here you have references that we have selected only 6 for the paper sent in for the publication on the Act. So I thank you very much for your attention. And I stopped the condivision.
Yes, in the green. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Annamaria, for this inspiring opening to our meeting. We will discuss all this work after this first part of.
Yeah.
So now moving from Italy to Serbia, I will invite Dijana Vukomanovki that will present us her work.
Thank you very much, Professor Giacomosi. My name is Diana or Diana. It is very charming when you pronounce that. So thank you very much for your attention up to now. And I'm really very much inspired by very comprehensive and detailed presentation made by Annamaria de Rosa. So I will start share my screen. I hope that you can see it.
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to minimize. So just to tell you that up to now there is 19 participants in our room Zoom presentation. So my presentation is similar to presentation made by De Rosa. And it is concentrated to analyze what identities and what boundaries have been presented so far in management of migration policy and what forms of activism have been developed. As De Rosa already stated, the migrants have very different groups. So usually we are using that general term people on the move, which is neutral, all-inclusive term to describe complexity of mixed migrations, such as refugees, internally displaced persons, migrants, asylum